I never expected this from my step-grandson. It was all so subtle, so easy to overlook, but in hindsight, there were signs I should have paid attention to. I thought I had a solid family life. I was married to someone I loved deeply, and my life was filled with the warmth of family. My spouse had children from a previous marriage, and I had come to love them as my own. My step-grandson, Alex, was one of the many people who made my days feel full. He was in his early 20s, young, bright, and seemingly innocent. At family gatherings, he'd often come by to visit, sit at the table, share a meal, and laugh along with the rest of us. I never thought anything could disrupt the peace of our home. I always felt a sense of pride whenever Alex visited. He wasn't like other young adults. He respected the family structure, always seemed to appreciate our gatherings, and treated everyone with kindness. He was a good kid. No one would have guessed that there was anything more brewing under the surface. Over time, his visits became more frequent, and we would often have these quiet, one-on-one conversations. We'd talk about life, about growing up, and the challenges he faced. In those moments, I felt like I was helping him navigate the complexities of adulthood. There was something about our conversations that left me feeling closer to him, like we shared some unspoken bond. But I never thought of it as anything more than a mentor-student relationship. I had no reason to believe anything else was going on. Alex always made a point to help around the house. Whether it was fixing a broken faucet or helping with groceries, he was there when we needed him. His actions spoke volumes. He wasn't just a passive member of the family. He was active, involved, and attentive. I appreciated that. There were times when my spouse and I would be busy, and Alex would step in without hesitation, making sure everything was in order. It made me feel like we had a strong foundation, that we were a family that could count on each other, that no one would ever disrupt the peace we had built. But something was changing, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It started off small. Alex seemed to linger a little longer when we talked, his gaze lingering just a second too long, his smile a bit warmer than usual. At first, I thought I was just imagining it. After all, I was close to his age and had always maintained a sense of warmth and care toward him, as any family member would. But these small, seemingly insignificant changes were enough to make me feel uneasy, like something was shifting beneath the surface. I brushed it off. Maybe I was reading too much into it. After all, family dynamics can sometimes blur the lines of what's appropriate. Then there were the subtle touches. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but enough to make me question if I was misinterpreting the situation. A touch on the arm, a hand lingering just a bit too long on the small of my back when he was guiding me through a door. I couldn't deny it, but I also didn't want to admit it. I thought, this is family. He's just being affectionate. There's no harm in it. But deep down, a part of me felt like something wasn't quite right. I started noticing that Alex would often choose to sit next to me during family meals. There was always room for him at the table, but he'd often place himself close to me, even when there were other seats available. His attention would shift to me during conversations, and his eyes would lock with mine in ways that made my heart skip a beat. But I dismissed it. I convinced myself it was nothing more than friendly closeness, the kind that comes naturally in a tight-knit family. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between us. But I had no reason to think anything of it. After all, we were just talking about his future, about his dreams, his aspirations. It wasn't anything extraordinary, nothing out of the ordinary for a step-grandparent and grandchild to talk about. But those conversations felt more intense somehow. They weren't just casual anymore. He started confiding in me in ways I hadn't expected, revealing parts of himself he hadn't shared with anyone else. There was something vulnerable in his voice, and in that vulnerability, I couldn't help but feel a deeper connection. I understood him in ways that perhaps no one else did. I'd often find myself thinking about those moments long after he'd gone home. I'd replay the conversations in my head, analyzing his words, his body language, his gaze. And then I would remind myself, he's just a young man trying to figure things out. He's probably just looking for someone to talk to. I told myself it was normal, that I wasn't reading too much into it. But something was eating at me. Why did it feel different? Why did it feel like there was an unspoken tension between us? The truth was I was starting to feel something for him too, though I couldn't define what it was. Was it just a deep, familial connection, or was it something else entirely? I didn't know, but I tried to push those thoughts away, focusing on the idea that nothing was amiss, that everything was perfectly fine. Looking back now, I see the signs. They were all there, the lingering glances, the private conversations, the moments that seemed innocent at the time but were actually far from it. But in the moment, I couldn't see it. I didn't want to. Everything felt so right, so normal, and I couldn't fathom how it could turn into something I would never expect from my step-grandson. I had no idea what was about to unfold, but I would soon find out in the most painful and unexpected way possible. It wasn't long before I could no longer ignore the discomfort gnawing at me. The small moments that once felt harmless now felt like something far more significant. I began to feel a sense of unease whenever Alex was around. There was an intimacy in the way he spoke to me, the way his presence lingered just a bit too close. But even then, I told myself I was overthinking it. I told myself I was simply imagining things, convincing myself that nothing had changed. I wanted to believe that. I had to. But the signs grew more difficult to dismiss. At family gatherings, he began to seek me out more often. When we sat down to dinner, he would always position himself near me, as if he were drawn to me. The casual touches on the arm became more frequent, an arm around my shoulders, a touch on my back when he leaned in to whisper something in my ear. There was a warmth in his touch that lingered too long, and I could no longer chalk it up to familial affection. His eyes would follow me across the room, always finding a way to meet mine, and I would feel this unsettling heat rise in my chest. The way he looked at me wasn't just familial, it was loaded with something else. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it made me uncomfortable. Yet I kept convincing myself that it was nothing. Nothing at all. The worst part was the silence that followed. I began to feel more and more alone, like I was the only one who could sense something wasn't right. My spouse seemed oblivious, caught up in their own world, unaware of the growing tension. And maybe I was imagining it, but I could have sworn I felt a shift in our marriage. We weren't as close as we used to be, and though I tried to push it aside, the feeling of isolation crept up on me. The emotional distance between my spouse and me seemed to widen, and I found myself turning to Alex more often, seeking that same emotional connection I once had with my partner.
But I didn't realize, Tate.
The confrontation with Alex left me reeling. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, disbelief. I didn't know what to say, what to feel. The initial shock had paralyzed me, but now, standing in front of him, I couldn't escape the weight of what had just been revealed. He stood there, his face flushed, eyes full of guilt, trying to find the right words. But there was nothing he could say that could undo the hurt he had caused. The trust one had placed in him, the way I had seen him as part of the family, had all been shattered in an instant. "Why did you do this?" I asked, the words coming out choked. My voice trembled, but I couldn't hold back the flood of emotions any longer. "You're my step-grandson, Alex. How could you betray me like this?" He looked at me, his face contorted in shame, his hands wringing together nervously. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't know how to stop it." His voice cracked with sincerity, but it didn't ease the pain. His words felt hollow, like he was trying to justify something that was unjustifiable. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, the anger building up inside me. "Did you think you could keep this hidden forever?" "No," he whispered, his gaze falling to the floor. "I never wanted you to find out. I didn't know what I was doing. It just felt like we were connected in a way I couldn't explain. I never meant for things to go this far." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to shake him, to make him understand how deeply he had hurt me. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed answers. I needed to understand how we had gotten here. How had I missed it? How had I allowed him to get so close, to make me feel things I shouldn't have felt? "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice now cold, controlled. "You've crossed a line, Alex. A line that can't be erased. I trusted you, and you've destroyed that trust. I don't know how to look at you the same way anymore." His eyes filled with tears, and he stepped forward, his hands reaching out to me. "Please, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I've been confused, and I thought you understood me better than anyone else." The desperation in his voice made me hesitate for a moment, but only for a moment. I had to remind myself that this wasn't just some misunderstanding. This wasn't some innocent mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing, and even if he had been confused about his feelings, it didn't change the fact that he had betrayed me. The damage had been done, and no amount of apologies could undo that. "I can't do this," I said, backing away from him. "I don't know if I can even look at you again. You've violated something sacred. Our family, my trust. And you can't just take that back." Alex looked devastated, like he was crumbling right in front of me. I could see the pain in his eyes, but it didn't change the fact that he had crossed a line. His actions had consequences, and no matter how sorry he was, I had to protect myself. I had to protect my family. "We need to tell your grandmother," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of what I was about to do. "We can't keep this a secret. She deserves to know. She has a right to know what's been going on." His face turned ashen, his mouth opening and closing as though he was trying to form words, but none came. "Please," he begged. "Please don't tell her. I'll do anything. I'll leave. I'll disappear if you want me to. Just don't tell her." But it was too late for that. I couldn't protect him anymore. I couldn't shield him from the reality of what he had done. And I couldn't keep this from my spouse. I had to tell them. The truth was out, and I had to face the consequences. We all did. The next few days were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, regret, and a deep, unshakable sense of betrayal. I couldn't focus on anything except the mess Alex had left in his wake. Our family was fractured now, and I wasn't sure how to pick up the pieces. I had to face my spouse and tell them everything, and I knew that wouldn't be easy. The trust between us had been tested, and it was unclear whether it could ever be fully repaired. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Alex would leave, if my spouse and I would even survive this. The weight of it all was suffocating. But I couldn't keep carrying this burden alone. It was time to face the reality of what had happened, no matter how painful it was. The hardest part was yet to come. Confronting my spouse, telling them about the betrayal, would be the ultimate test. I didn't know if we could ever move past this, but I knew that the truth had to come out. No more lies, no more secrets. The damage was done, and now it was time to figure out what came next. In the end, I wasn't sure what would happen. Would we stay together? Could we rebuild? Or was this the end of everything we had worked so hard to build? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. Everything had changed. Nothing would ever be the same again. I sat there, my mind still reeling from everything that had happened. The truth had come out, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a broken family. I had spent days avoiding the inevitable confrontation with my spouse, dreading the moment I would have to explain what Alex had done. But there was no escaping it anymore. I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. I couldn't bury the hurt any longer. The time had come to face the reality of the situation. When I finally told my spouse, their reaction was just as painful as I had feared. The shock in their eyes, the disbelief in their voice, it was all too much to bear. I could see the hurt building, the confusion, and the anger. They didn't know how to process what I was telling them, and neither did I. In the moment, it felt like everything we had built together had been reduced to nothing. "How could he do this?" my spouse asked, their voice trembling with emotion. "How could Alex, of all people, betray us like this? He was part of this family. He was supposed to be someone we could trust." I had no answers. I didn't know how it had gone this far. I didn't understand why Alex had crossed that line. All I could offer was the painful truth. He had made a choice, and now we all had to live with the consequences. My spouse was hurt, but they also seemed to understand the magnitude of what had happened. The betrayal wasn't just mine, it was ours. It affected every one of us, and there was no way to undo it. I watched my spouse struggle with the decision of what to do next. Should we confront Alex again? Should we ask him to leave? Should we try to repair the damage he had caused? The options were overwhelming, and every choice seemed to lead to more pain. Ultimately, we both realized that there was no simple solution. The trust that had been broken couldn't be mended overnight. It would take time, and it might never fully heal. Alex, on the other hand, had disappeared after our initial confrontation. I didn't know where he had gone, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that he was no longer in the house. His absence created an emptiness that I wasn't sure how to fill. We had all been living in a state of uncertainty, but now it felt even more palpable. His actions had caused a ripple effect that was impossible to ignore. The hardest part, though, was the guilt. I kept asking myself why I hadn't